The morning Solana disappeared, the desert was too quiet. No hawk cried above the cliffs. No wind moved through the dry grass, only the tracks remained. Tahu stood beside the broken trail with his hands closed into fists. He was young then, but already known among the Apache as a warrior who did not fear pain. His shoulders were strong. His eyes were dark and steady. Yet that morning his strength meant nothing. Solana was gone. She had been taken before sunrise while the camp still slept under a pale sky. Her blanket lay torn near the edge of the stream. Her necklace was pressed into the mud, as if she had tried to leave him a sign. Tahu picked it up and held it against his chest. The others told him the riders had crossed the northern pass. They told him the trail would vanish in stone. They told him no one could follow men who knew how to disappear. Tahu did not answer. He mounted his horse and rode. For 3 days he followed broken signs. A bent branch, a mark in the sand, a piece of cloth caught on thorn. Every clue was small, but to him it was a voice. Solana was speaking to him through the land. Do not stop. He did not stop. On the 4th night he found the ashes of a cold fire. There were boot marks around it. 6 men, maybe 7. One horse carried less weight than the others. That meant Solana had walked for part of the way. Tahu knelt and touched the ground. She was alive. That single truth entered his heart like fire. He rode until his horse trembled. He crossed red canyons and dry riverbeds. He drank little. He slept almost nothing. When his body begged for rest, he saw Solana's face and pushed forward. Again, Solana had not only been the woman he loved, she had been the one person who saw the man. Beneath the warrior, when the tribe praised his courage, she asked if his wounds hurt. When others celebrated victory, she sat beside him in silence. When he believed his path was only battle, she told him a man could be brave and gentle at the same time. He had promised to build a life with her near the cottonwoods. He had promised she would never be alone. Now every mile felt like a broken promise. On the 7th day, the trail ended near a wide road used by traders and soldiers. Many wagons had passed. Many horses had crossed. The signs were crushed beneath dust and wheels. Tahu searched until sunset. Nothing. He searched until moonrise. Nothing. At dawn he was still. There. His friend Nantan found him kneeling beside the trail. Tahu did not turn. Nantan spoke softly. Brother, the trail is gone. Tahu looked at the empty land ahead. Then I will find another trail. Nantan lowered his eyes. He loved Tahu like blood, but he feared what grief could do to a man. You may search for years. Tahu stood and tied Solana's necklace around his wrist. Then, I will search for years. From that day, his life became one long road. He rode from settlement to settlement. He listened in trading posts. He questioned scouts. He followed rumors of a young woman with black hair and a scar on her hand. Sometimes the rumor was false. Sometimes it led to nothing. Sometimes he arrived too late. Years passed. The boyish lines left his face. His body grew harder. His silence grew deeper. Many believed Solana was dead. Some whispered that Tahu was chasing a ghost, but he never stopped. In winter he searched, through snow. In summer he crossed land that burned the feet of horses. He helped strangers only to ask one question. Have you seen her? Some pitied him. Some laughed. Some lied. Those who lied learned that Tahu's patience had limits, but he never became cruel. That was the part of Solana he carried with him. Her kindness remained inside him like a hidden spring. One evening, after many seasons of searching, Tahu reached a poor border town near the mountains. Rain had turned the street to mud. Lamps burned behind dirty windows. Men shouted from a saloon. A dog barked near an old stable. Tahu was tired, enough to fall from his horse. He led the animal toward the well. Then he heard a voice. A woman was singing to a child. The song was old Apache. Tahu froze. Words trembled through the rain. It was the same song Solana used to sing when the night was cold and the fire was low. His heart struck against his ribs. Slowly he turned. Across the muddy street a woman stood, beneath the porch of a small house. Her hair was covered with a faded shawl. Her face was thinner than the one he remembered. Time had touched her. Sorrow had touched her more. But when she lifted her head, Tahu forgot how to breathe. Solana. The cup fell from her hand. For a moment the whole world disappeared. There was only rain, only silence, only two souls staring across the years. Tahu took one step. Solana covered her. Mouth as tears filled her eyes, she whispered his name, Tahu, Tahu, crossed the street without feeling the rain. For years he had imagined this moment. He had dreamed of it beside campfires and under cold stars. He had seen it in his mind so many times that it no longer felt real. Yet now Solana stood before him, alive. Only a few steps away, tears ran down her face. Tahu stopped in front of her and could not find words. The warrior who had faced raiders and storms without fear suddenly felt helpless. Solana reached out slowly and touched his cheek. You came, Tahu swallowed. Hard, I never stopped. For a moment neither moved. Then Solana stepped forward and wrapped her arms around him. Tahu held her as if the world might steal her. Again, the years between them vanished, but only for a moment. A small voice came from the doorway. Mama. Tahu looked up. A little girl stood there holding a blanket. She could not have been older than 7. Dark eyes stared at him with curiosity. Solana quickly wiped away her tears. Come inside. The house was small and simple. A single lamp illuminated the room. The child sat quietly near the table while Solana prepared tea. Tahu watched her. Something was wrong. The joy in her eyes was real, but so was the sadness. Finally he spoke. What happened to you? Solana lowered her head. The men who took me sold me to a criminal group near the border. I escaped months later, but I was far from home. I searched for you too. Every trail led nowhere. Tahu listened without interrupting. I thought you were dead, she continued. After years of searching, I had nothing left. Then I found this child alone after an attack on a wagon train. She looked toward the girl. Her parents did not survive, so I stayed. The child smiled softly at Solana. Tahu understood immediately. The girl was not her daughter by blood, but she was family. What is her name? He asked Elena. The girl approached carefully. You the man Mama talks about when she thinks nobody is listening? Solana looked embarrassed. Tahu almost smiled. Maybe. Elena nodded. Then you must be important. The room filled with a warmth Tahu had not felt in many years. But before anyone could speak again, loud voices echoed outside. Several horses stopped in front of the house. Solana's face turned pale. Tahu noticed immediately. Who are they? She looked toward the window. The reason I never left this town. The men who control and their leader wants me to marry him. Tahu slowly stood outside. Heavy boots approached the door. Then someone knocked. Hard, very hard, and a voice called from the darkness. Solana, open the door. The knocking came again, stronger this time. Elena rushed beside Solana and held her hand. Fear was visible in both their faces. Tahu stepped toward the door. Who is he? Solana answered quietly. His name is Victor Hale. He owns most of this town. The sheriff works for him. The merchants fear him. Nobody says no to him. Tahu nodded. Then somebody should. Before Solana could stop him, he opened the door. Rain poured from the dark sky. 3 men stood outside. In front of them was Victor Hale. He was tall and well-dressed, but there was coldness in his eyes. His smile disappeared when he saw Tahu. Who are you? Tahu stood motionless. A friend. Victor glanced past him and saw Solana. I came for my answer. You have avoided me long enough. Solana gathered her courage. My answer has not changed. I will not marry you. The men behind Victor exchanged looks. No one usually rejected him. Victor's expression hardened. You live in a house I paid for. You eat food brought by my wagons. Everything here belongs to me. Solana lifted her chin. I do not. For a second, Tahu saw the same brave woman he had fallen in love with years ago. Victor took a step forward. Then his eyes settled on Tahu again. The Apache is the reason. Tahu did not move. Victor laughed. You think one man can protect you? He pointed toward the town. I have 30 men here. Tahu looked directly into his eyes. Then bring 30. The laughter vanished. Rain dripped from the brim of Victor's hat. Finally he smiled again, but this time the smile carried a threat. Tomorrow morning, Main Street. If you win a fair fight, I leave Solana alone forever. If you lose, you leave town and never return. Solana immediately shook her head. No, this is a trap. Victor ignored her. Well, Apache, Tahu knew it was a trap. Men like Victor never played fair. But he also knew something else. Running would only put Solana and Elena in danger again. So he answered calmly, I will be there. Victor turned away. For the first time all evening, uncertainty appeared in his eyes. Perhaps he had expected fear. Instead, he found none. The horses disappeared into the storm. When the street became silent again, Solana closed the door. You should not have agreed. Tahu looked at her. I searched for you for years. I did not cross deserts and mountains to lose you tomorrow. Elena smiled. I think he is very brave. Tahu knelt beside her. Being brave means protecting the people you love. The little girl thought for a moment. Then I hope you win. That night nobody slept much. Outside the rain continued to fall. Inside the small house, 3 lives sat together for the first time, and for the first time in many years, Tahu felt something stronger than determination. Hope. But across town, Victor Hale stood in a stable speaking to 6 armed men. There will be no fair fight tomorrow. One of the men nodded. What do you want us to do? Victor's eyes became cold. The Apache must never leave that street alive. Morning arrived beneath grey clouds. The entire town gathered along the main street. People stood on porches and sidewalks whispering among themselves. Most had come to watch Victor Hale win. Others had come because they secretly hoped someone would finally stand against him. Tahu walked into the street alone. His calm presence silenced many voices. Victor arrived moments later with several men beside him. He smiled as though the outcome had already been decided. Solana and Elena watched from a distance. Solana's hands trembled. She knew Victor too well. Nothing about this would be fair. Victor stepped forward. The rules are simple. First man unable to continue loses. Tahu nodded. Let's begin. The crowd formed a circle. Victor removed his coat and charged forward. He was larger than most men and clearly experienced in fighting. His first attack was fast, but Tahu avoided it easily. The second strike missed as well. The third did not. Victor's fist hit Tahu's shoulder. A cheer erupted from Victor's supporters. Tahu barely reacted. He waited, watched, measured, then he moved. One quick step, one powerful strike. Victor stumbled backward into the dirt. The crowd gasped. Nobody had ever seen him knocked down. Anger flashed across Victor's face. He attacked again. This time the fight became fierce. Dust rose into the air. Boots scraped the ground. The 2 men exchanged heavy blows. But little by little the difference became obvious. Victor fought with rage. Tahu fought with discipline. Finally, Victor collapsed to one knee. The town fell silent. The fight was over. Tahu stepped back and allowed him to stand. You lost. For a moment, Victor lowered his head. Then everything happened at once. A gunshot echoed through the street. One of Victor's hidden men had fired from a rooftop. The bullet struck Tahu in the side. Solana screamed. The crowd scattered in panic. Victor smiled. Now 6 armed men rushed into the street. But they had underestimated Tahu. Even wounded, he moved with incredible speed. He grabbed a fallen barrel for cover and pulled a frightened child out of danger. Then he disarmed the first attacker and knocked him unconscious. 2 more rushed forward. They fell moments later. The townspeople watched in disbelief. This was not just a warrior. This was a man who had survived years of hardship and loss, a man who refused to surrender. Yet blood was beginning to stain his shirt. Solana ran toward him. Tahu, leave now, he said. Take Elena and go. I'm not leaving you again. Before Tahu could answer, another voice echoed across the street. Stop. Everyone turned. An elderly man stepped forward from the crowd, the former sheriff. For years he had remained silent out of fear. Not today. I saw everything, he shouted. Victor cheated. The whole town saw it. Others began speaking, then more and more. People who had spent years living in fear suddenly found courage. Victor looked around and realized something terrible. The town was no longer afraid of him. His face turned pale. Slowly he backed away. Then he ran. Several citizens immediately chased after him. As chaos erupted around them, Tahu dropped to one knee. The wound was worse than he had admitted. Solana caught him before he fell. Their eyes met. After all these years, fate had finally reunited them, but now Tahu's life hung by a thread, and darkness began closing around him. When Tahu opened his eyes, he saw firelight dancing across a wooden ceiling. For a moment he did not know where he was. Then he heard a familiar voice. "You should be resting." Solana sat beside the bed. Relief filled her face when she saw him awake. Tahu tried to sit up, but pain immediately shot through his side. "The bullet." Solana nodded. "The doctor removed it. You were unconscious for 3 days. 3 days. Tahu looked around the room. A small cabin near the edge of town. Safe, at least for now. "Where is Elena?" Solana smiled. "Outside. She tells everyone that an Apache hero lives here." For the first time in years, Tahu laughed. The sound surprised even him. Days passed. His strength slowly returned. The people of the town began visiting the cabin. Some brought food. Others brought supplies. Many simply wanted to thank the man who had stood up to Victor Hale. Yet Victor himself had vanished. No one knew where he had gone. That worried Tahu. Men like Victor never accepted defeat quietly. One evening Tahu sat outside watching the sunset with Elena. The little girl kicked a stone along the dirt path. "Are you going to leave again?" The question caught him by surprise. Why would you ask that? Because everyone leaves eventually. Tahu looked toward the mountains. For years he had lived alone. For years his only purpose had been finding Solana. Now everything had changed. He placed a hand on Elena's shoulder. "Not if I can help it." The girl smiled. "Good, because Mama is happy when you're here." Tahu glanced toward the cabin window where Solana was preparing supper. She was smiling too. A simple, peaceful smile. The kind he had not seen since before she disappeared. For a brief moment he allowed himself to believe their struggles were over. Then a rider appeared on the horizon. The horse was exhausted. The man nearly fell from the saddle as he reached the cabin. Tahu recognized him immediately. Nantan, his old friend. Nantan's face was covered with dust and concern. "Brother, what happened?" Nantan looked directly at him. "Our people need you." Tahu stood. The smile vanished from his face. "Tell me, a mining company has entered Apache land. They are destroying hunting grounds and forcing families away." Tahu's jaw tightened. "And the tribal council? Divided. Some want peace, others want war." Nantan hesitated. "There is more. Victor Hale is with them." Silence filled the air. Solana stepped outside just in time to hear those words. Victor had escaped, and now he had found new allies. Nantan lowered his voice. "He is telling everyone that you attacked innocent settlers. He wants revenge." Tahu slowly looked toward the darkening horizon. For years, fate had kept him separated from Solana. Now fate was testing them again, but this time he would not face the storm alone. Solana stepped beside him and took his hand. "Whatever comes next," she said, "we face it together." Far away beyond the mountains, Victor Hale sat beside a campfire with several powerful men. His hatred had only grown. He stared into the flames and smiled. Soon the Apache would come, and this time there would be no escape. 2 days later, Tahu stood at the edge of town preparing his horse. The morning air was cold. Elena hugged him tightly. "You promised not to leave." Tahu knelt beside her. "And I keep my promises." The little girl looked confused. "But you're leaving, only for a while. Then I'm coming back." Elena finally nodded. "You better." Tahu smiled and touched her forehead. Solana watched silently. When Elena ran ahead to gather supplies, Tahu turned toward the woman he had searched for most of his life. Part of him feared this moment. Not because of danger, because he remembered what it felt like to lose her. "I don't want to leave you again," he admitted. Solana stepped closer. "Then don't. Come back." Simple words. But they carried more meaning than any speech. Tahu gently held her hands. "I searched for years. I won't lose you now." Solana leaned forward and kissed him. a quiet promise beneath the morning sun. Then the journey began. Tahu and Nantan rode west toward Apache territory. The farther they traveled, the worse the situation appeared. Trees had been cut down, streams were polluted by mining operations, several hunting camps stood abandoned, families were afraid. Angry, desperate. When Tahu finally reached the tribal council, the arguments had already begun. Some warriors wanted immediate war, others feared that war would destroy everything. The council chief looked exhausted. "We need unity," he said. "Instead, we are tearing ourselves apart." Tahu listened carefully. Then he spoke. "If we fight blindly, Victor Hale wins. If we do nothing, Victor Hale wins. We need proof. Proof that the miners broke agreements and stole our land." The council slowly grew quiet. For the first time, someone offered a path other than surrender or war. The next morning, Tahu led a small group into the mountains. Their mission was simple: find evidence. For 3 days, they followed supply routes and hidden trails. Then, on the 4th night, they discovered something unexpected: a secret camp, boxes filled with forged documents, maps showing land theft, bribes paid to officials, everything Victor needed to seize Apache territory. Tahu realized this information could destroy Victor's entire operation, but before they could leave, a gunshot echoed through the darkness. One of the scouts fell. Men emerged from every direction. Victor's men, they had been expected. A trap. Tahu immediately drew his knife. Protect the evidence. The battle that followed was brief and fierce. The Apache scouts escaped into the forest carrying the documents. But Tahu remained behind. Someone had to slow the pursuers. Alone he stood among the trees, outnumbered once again. Then a familiar voice emerged from the shadows. "You never learn." Victor Hale stepped forward holding a rifle. His smile returned. "This time there is no town to save you. No witnesses, no mercy." Tahu stared at him calmly. "You still underestimate me." Victor raised the rifle, and deep in the forest, the two enemies prepared for their final confrontation. Victor pulled the trigger. The rifle exploded through the silence of the forest. Tahu threw himself behind a large pine tree as the bullet shattered bark inches from his head. Victor laughed. "You cannot hide forever." Tahu knew that. He also knew Victor was angry. Angry men made mistakes. Slowly he moved through the trees while Victor's men spread out around the area. The forest became a deadly maze. Branches snapped. Footsteps approached. One attacker rushed forward and suddenly found Tahu standing in front of him. The man barely had time to react. Moments later he was lying unconscious on the ground. Another attacker appeared, then another. One by one they were removed from the hunt. Victor soon realized something was wrong. "Where are they?" No answer came back. For the first time, uncertainty entered his voice. Tahu was no longer running, he was hunting. As darkness settled over the mountains, Victor found himself increasingly isolated. Finally, he reached a rocky clearing. There he stopped. A figure stood waiting. "Tahu!" The Apache warrior stepped into the moonlight. "Now it is only you and me." Victor raised the rifle. "You ruined everything." "No," Tahu replied. "Your greed ruined everything." Victor fired again. The bullet missed. Tahu charged forward. The rifle fell from Victor's hands as the two men collided. The fight was fierce. Years of hatred exploded between them. Victor fought desperately. Tahu fought with purpose. At last, Victor stumbled backward toward the edge of a steep cliff. Breathing heavily, he looked around for escape. There was none. "You should finish it," he said. "After everything I have done." Tahu stared at him. For a moment he remembered the years of searching, the loneliness, the pain, the stolen time. Then he remembered Solana, Elena, his people. "No." Victor looked confused. "No." Tahu shook his head. "I spent years searching for what I lost. I will not lose myself too." Suddenly, distant voices echoed through the forest. Nantan and several Apache scouts emerged from the darkness. Victor was surrounded. His shoulders dropped. The fight was over. The next weeks changed everything. The stolen documents were delivered to federal investigators. Corrupt officials were exposed. Mining operations were suspended. Several powerful men were arrested, including Victor Hale. For the first time in years, Apache families could breathe again. The tribal council gathered beneath the open sky. Their chief approached Tahu before the entire tribe. "You saved our land without starting a war. You reminded us who we are," the people applauded. But Tahu's thoughts were elsewhere, far away, back to a small town, back to a woman waiting for him, back to a little girl who expected him to keep his promise. 3 days later, he finally returned. As his horse approached the town, Elena spotted him first. "He's back." She ran so fast she nearly fell. Tahu lifted her into the air and laughed. Then he saw Solana standing near the cabin. Tears filled her eyes. Neither spoke. They simply walked toward each other, and after years of separation, years of searching, years of pain, they embraced beneath the setting sun, for the first time since fate had reunited them. There were no enemies between them, no distance, no fear, only love. But fate still had one final surprise waiting for them. Life slowly became peaceful. Weeks passed without trouble. The town was changing. People smiled more. Businesses reopened. Children played freely in the streets. For the first time in many years, Tahu allowed himself to dream about the future. A future with Solana, a future with Elena. One evening they sat together outside the cabin watching the sunset paint the mountains gold. Elena looked from one to the other. "When are you two getting married?" Solana nearly dropped her cup. Tahu laughed. Elena crossed her arms. That was not an answer. The little girl's seriousness made them both smile. "Maybe soon," Solana admitted. Elena nodded with satisfaction. "Good. Because everyone already thinks you're a family." The words touched Tahu deeply. Family. For years he had believed that dream was gone forever. Later that night, after Elena had fallen asleep, Tahu and Solana walked beneath the stars. Neither spoke for a while. The silence between them was comfortable, peaceful. Finally, Tahu stopped near the old cottonwood tree outside town. "Do you remember what I promised you long ago?" Solana smiled softly. A home beside the trees, a life together. Tahu reached into a small leather pouch. "I searched for you for years. Not because I was chasing the past, because you were always my future." Then he revealed a beautiful silver ring, simple, elegant, perfect. Solana's eyes immediately filled with tears. Tahu took a deep breath. The brave warrior suddenly seemed nervous. "Will you marry me?" For a moment, Solana could not speak. Then she nodded. "Yes. 1,000 times yes." Tahu slipped the ring onto her finger. They embraced beneath the stars, believing at last that their story was finally reaching its happy ending. But 3 days later, a stranger arrived in town. He was an older man with grey hair and tired eyes. The moment he saw Solana, he froze. She stared back in confusion. "Do I know you?" The man struggled to answer. "No, at least I don't think so." Then he removed an old necklace from his pocket. The same symbol carved into it appeared on a necklace Solana had worn as a child. The color drained from her face. "Where did you get that?" The man looked equally shocked. "It belonged to my daughter, the daughter who disappeared 20 years ago." Silence fell. Tahu felt a strange sensation in his chest. The man stepped closer. His voice trembled. "What was the name of the village where you were born?" Solana answered. The stranger's eyes immediately filled with tears. Impossible. Everyone around them stood frozen. The man whispered words that changed everything. "Solana, I think I am your father." The entire world seemed to stop, because Solana had spent her whole life believing her family was dead, and now a ghost from her past stood before her, alive, waiting, and carrying answers she had searched for since childhood. The next few days were filled with questions. The stranger's name was Samuel Carter. He explained that many years earlier, his family had been attacked while traveling west. During the chaos, his young daughter disappeared. Everyone believed she had died. But Samuel never stopped searching, just as Tahu had never stopped searching for Solana. Piece by piece, the truth emerged. Old memories, a birthmark on Solana's shoulder, a small silver charm she had carried since childhood, stories only a father could know. At last there was no doubt. Samuel was telling the truth. After decades apart, father and daughter had found each other again. The reunion brought many tears, but also many difficult emotions. Solana was happy, yet she was overwhelmed. She had spent her entire life believing she belonged nowhere. Now suddenly she had a family she never expected to see. One evening she sat beside the river with Tahu. What if everything changes? Tahu looked at the water. Everything already changed the day I found you again. Solana smiled. You always know what to say. No, I just know what matters. He gently held her hand. And what matters is that you are here. A few days later, Samuel made an unexpected offer. Come with me, both of you. I have land in the north, a large ranch. You could have a wonderful life there. The proposal surprised everyone. For a moment, even Tahu remained silent. The offer was generous, a safe future, a comfortable home. But when Solana looked toward Tahu, she already knew the answer. My life is here, she said softly. Samuel followed her gaze. Toward Tahu, toward Elena, toward the town that had become her home. A smile slowly appeared on his face. Then I suppose I must accept that. The older man embraced his daughter. I spent 20 years searching for you. I don't intend to lose you again. So instead of saying goodbye, Samuel decided to stay for a while. The town welcomed him warmly. For the first time in decades, he finally had peace. Preparations for the wedding soon began. Elena appointed herself chief organizer. She took the job very seriously. Everyone in town laughed whenever she gave orders, yet beneath the happiness a final shadow still remained. One afternoon, a federal marshal arrived carrying news. Victor Hale had escaped custody. The celebration immediately stopped. The marshal looked concerned. 3 guards were injured. We believe he is heading south, toward this region. Tahu's expression hardened. The nightmare was not over. That night the town gathered to discuss what should be done. Fear returned to many faces. Victor had lost everything. A desperate man was often the most dangerous. As darkness settled over the valley, Tahu stood outside the cabin looking toward the distant hills. Solana joined him. Do you think he'll come here? Tahu nodded. Yes, because revenge is all he has left. Solana slipped her hand into his. Then we face him together. Far away beneath a moonless sky, Victor Hale rode through the darkness. His clothes were torn. His face carried scars from prison. But the hatred in his eyes burned stronger than ever. He whispered only one name, Tahu, and his horse continued toward the town, toward one final reckoning. The wedding was only 3 days away. Despite the danger, everyone continued preparing. The townspeople decorated the main square. Apache families arrived from distant lands. Samuel helped build a large wooden arch beside the river. Nobody wanted fear to steal their happiness, but Tahu remained alert. He knew Victor Hale was coming. The attack happened at dawn. A lookout spotted riders approaching from the hills. The alarm spread quickly through town. People rushed indoors. Warriors and townsmen took defensive positions. Tahu mounted his horse and rode toward the entrance of town. Victor appeared moments later with several desperate outlaws. His face carried the look of a man who had lost everything. This ends today, he shouted. Tahu nodded. Yes, it does. The confrontation was brief. Victor's followers were outnumbered and quickly surrounded. Most surrendered almost immediately. Only Victor continued forward, consumed by hatred, consumed by revenge. He pointed a revolver toward Tahu. For years I blamed you for my downfall. Tahu remained calm. You chose your own path. Victor laughed bitterly. Maybe. Slowly he lowered the weapon. For the first time the anger left his face. Only exhaustion remained. Federal marshals arrived moments later and took him into custody. This time there would be no escape. As Victor was led away, he looked back one final time. At the town, at the people, at the life he had destroyed. Then he disappeared down the road forever. And with him the last shadow finally vanished. 3 days later, the sun rose over a perfect morning. The entire valley gathered beside the river. Flowers decorated the shore. Children laughed. Music filled the air. Elena stood proudly at the front. She had spent weeks organizing everything and wanted everyone to know it. When Tahu appeared, the crowd smiled, the Apache warrior who had crossed deserts and mountains searching for the woman he loved, the man who had never surrendered. Then Solana arrived. Beautiful, radiant, the same woman fate had stolen from him years ago and then returned. Tahu could barely speak as she approached. Their eyes met. The years of pain, the years of searching, the years of hope, all led to this moment. They exchanged vows, beneath the cottonwood trees, where they had once dreamed of building a future together. When the ceremony ended, the valley erupted with cheers. Elena ran forward first and threw her arms around both of them. "Now we're really a family." Everyone laughed. Even Samuel wiped away tears. That evening, the celebration continued beneath thousands of stars. Music echoed through the valley. Stories were shared around campfires. For the first time in many years, Tahu felt completely at peace. Later that night, he sat beside Solana overlooking the river. "Do you ever regret searching for me for so long?" she asked. Tahu smiled. "Never. Not for a single day." Solana rested her head against his shoulder. The river flowed quietly beneath the moonlight, the same river that had witnessed their reunion, the same river that now witnessed their happiness. Sometimes fate separates people. Sometimes it tests them. Sometimes it forces them to walk through years of darkness. But some loves are stronger than distance, stronger than time, stronger than loss. Tahu had searched for Solana for years without giving up, and in the end, fate had returned her to him. Not because the journey was easy, but because true love never stopped walking toward home. And at last they were home.